location, exemptions, mineral rights, terrain. These are just a few of the things you need to consider when buying land in Texas. Hey y'all, it's Matt with living in New Braunfels, Texas, and the New Home Realty Group. So I've had a little bit of a change. I've changed brokerages. I've gone and joined the Legacy Broker Group out of Boerne, Texas. And one of the reasons was because I've had people that have been reaching out and wanting to buy land. And with Legacy Broker Group, I can service those people and give them better service and knowledge and experience with some of the agents that we have when they want to buy land and still do residential. Okay, I'm still here for, if you want to move to New Braunfels, Texas in this area, this video specifically for those who want to buy land in and around New Braunfels or buying land in Texas. All right, today we're going to cover some of the stuff that you need to know before buying land in Texas. Okay, with a lot of people nowadays wanting to, let's call it homesteading, they want to have their own little piece of the US, their own little piece of Texas, and they want to kind of be self-sufficient, right? So they want to have chickens, they want to have a little bit of livestock, they want to have a garden, and they won't have as many restrictions as you're going to have, say, like living in a neighborhood, because how many HOAs do you know that are going to allow some cows and chickens, right? Very, very few. So, I've got some friends that bought some land, recently in the last couple of years, and they're just kind of homesteading, and they have farm fresh eggs every single day, and they've got their own animals, and so they can, raise their own meat, all that good stuff. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why some people want to buy land. Some people want to have it for hunting. Some people want to have it to have a ranching operation, or just somewhere to get away from the city, to get away from the hustle and bustle and go out somewhere. Like my buddy Cody's got some land way out in West Texas, and they just go out there and hang out. They take their ATVs and they just love being out, like kind of in nature, being able to see the stars, no light pollution. It's just kind of awesome. And then you can do some hunting out there as well. But before you go and buy that land, there's a few things that you need to know. One thing that I've always heard, and I live by it, is don't wait to buy land and wait, because guess what? They're not making any more of it, right? So all the land that has been made. So if you're wanting to buy, it's better to do it sooner than later. When it comes to land in Texas, especially in Texas, not all land is the same, okay? It's not like some places where it's all just like kind of cornfields and it's really flat. Texas has different regions, and each region is completely different. So you might have like the region, like say out in West Texas, okay? It's gonna be fairly flat, with some hills and everything, but you're gonna have a lot of scrub brush, a lot of dirt, some sand. It's kind of like a desert. Or you might have here in New Braunfels where, we've got rolling hills, it's the hill country, okay? We've got a lot of cedar here, different kinds of trees, different game. Just southeast of us towards the coast, around like the Corpus Christi area, B County, Refugio County, the areas that I grew up in, it's gonna be more flat over there, but nice wooded trees, and it's very beautiful over there. And when you just start going north of Beeville, that's when it starts to get a little bit of hilly. And then, you're gonna have stuff out in East Texas where you've got more like very tall trees, like pines and whatnot, and it's very wooded over there. So even in like, just say the New Braunfels area, so just north of New Braunfels, right? Around New Braunfels, it's a hill country, and it's kind of some scrub brush along with some cedar and some other trees. It's not just cedar, okay? It's very beautiful out here, but you just go a little bit further south, just a few minutes, like so towards Seguin, and you're gonna have more grassy area, all right? Not as much scrub brush, it's gonna be grassier, a little bit more gently rolling, all great land. So one thing to consider is, what do you really want your terrain to look like, okay? If it's just gonna be something that's gonna be recreational for you, or even if you're gonna be building a home on it, what kind of terrain do you want? What do you want your surroundings to look like? What's gonna be home for you? And with that, each area is gonna have different soil types, like all over the place. Like, mainly here in New Braunfels, what I'm gonna tell you is, so 35 kind of runs more like east and west instead of north to south. But anyway, on the left side of 35, or however you want to look at it, the west side or the north side, however you're looking at the map, we've got a lot of limestone in the soil. So if you're going to be wanting to dig or plant crops or anything like that, it's going to be a little bit harder, okay? You might want to have some raised beds or something like that around here. But you go further south on the other side of 35, going back towards Seguin, that was farmland. That's like that expansive soil and everything, and you're gonna be able to like plant stuff in there. It's more susceptible to it, to like some farming. The other side of the coin is you're gonna have, what I talk about with my residential channels is, if you're building a home on it, you're not gonna have as much shifting in your foundation, or the probability of shifting. here on the north side of town as you would on the south side, because that expansive soil will be more susceptible to shifting in your foundation. Not saying it's going to happen, as long as you maintain the area around your home and everything, you should be good, but just something to consider. Hey y'all, hope you're enjoying this video of buying land in Texas and what to consider. If you can do me a favor, just go and hit that like button and also hit subscribe and hit that little bell so you can be notified every time I put out a new video. And if you're looking to buy here, whether it's going to be residential land or anything like that, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. All that contact information is down below. All right, sorry for the interruption, back to the video. All right, another point, just like homes, not all land is going to cost the same. All right, when you have places that are more desirable, a lot of people are moving to, such as like say the Texas Hill Country, east of Austin, things like that, the price per acre is going to be a lot higher. And also whenever you get like a smaller tract of land, that price per acre is going to be higher than when you're buying a larger tract of land. Kind of like with the square footage of a house, the price per square foot is going to go down slightly, whenever you've got a bigger house versus a smaller house. It's going to look different. So don't compare it like that. It's like comparing apples to oranges. So, the price per land over here, in the Texas Hill Country area, New Braunfels, Austin, all this section, right, is going to cost more than what it's going to cost, like say out in West Texas. Maybe even if it's just one residential lot. So one residential lot here in Vintage Oaks, where I live, they can start around $150,000 and they can go up to like, 200,000 plus. It depends on the size. Most of them are around an acre. So that's something to consider. But anyway, that's the residential stuff, right? Out in West Texas, you can buy well over 100 acres for like less than $200,000. It's insane. Okay, you can buy huge tracts of land very cheap over there, relatively speaking, because it's not all the same. It's not as desirable. There's not as much infrastructure over there, right? There's not as many cities. It's very remote. You're not necessarily going to have the utilities and everything readily available as you will here. And not as many people are moving out to West Texas, going out I-10. So it's just not as desirable as it is right here. So keep that in mind as well. Another thing to consider, with the price and everything, is your location and accessibility. Do you need to be close to a town? Do you need to be close to a city? Okay, how far of a drive do you need that to be? If you're getting a little bit older in age, do you need to be close to medical facilities? Things like that to consider, like, how far is the school from there? If you have children, is there a bus stop? How long is it going to take you to drive the kids into school? Also, is there road access? Are you going to be off of a highway or maybe even a county or a local road? Or is there going to be a private road? And you also got to consider, are there going to be any future developments in that area? Okay, we can't always tell if there's going to be future developments, right? Because some of these home builders or, other companies, they might kind of keep that a little bit hidden and it's a little bit hard to search. But, consider that. Are there going to be future developments? Like I just had somebody that called me and they're like, hey, we're really interested in this land over here. It's like 12 acres. It's, it's a good location. And I, knowing what they know, what I know about them and what they're looking for, I had to tell them, like, the road that it's on is a very busy road because of this business that's right over here. And directly across the street is a new construction neighborhood. So, I just let them know that. I'm like, hey, I'm not dissuading them or anything, but just to let you know, this is what's in that location. And they're like, oh yeah, that's not for us. All right, the other thing you got to consider are deed restrictions. Are there deed restrictions that come with the land? So deed restrictions are rules that are set in place that are there, after the land was like subdivided or whatever it is. Even if it's going to be like 10, 20 acres, 100 acres, there may be deed restrictions that come with it. While there's no HOA, no homeowners association or property owners association that you've got to pay, there are still restrictions that are in place, okay? I had some clients, just to give you an example, I had some clients that bought like 4 or 5 acres near Seguin, outside of Seguin. They're outside the city limits, but there were deed restrictions in place. They didn't know it, they didn't read them close enough, whatever it was. For some reason, honest mistake, what they wanted to do, they wanted to put a manufactured home on it for their son to live, a little bit more independently outside of the house, but have his own place. Well, the deed restriction said no manufactured homes and only one residence per lot. And so they got a letter. They got a letter saying, hey, you can't have that. You have to remove it. They called me. So we went over the deed restrictions and like, yes, you can't have that. I didn't know it. They didn't talk to me ahead of time. but we're like, no, you can't have it there. So they had to remove it. All right. So that could be in place. One of the things that we can do, as agents that are going to represent you on your purchase, is we can go and search for some place that doesn't have any restrictions. So that's one of the things in the criteria in our MLS searches. Restrictions, none. Okay. That means there's no restrictions. You do what you want with your property. Nobody's going to mess with you. So that's always kind of nice, kind of have that independence. Some of the deed restrictions that you'll find a lot of places are only one residence per lot. So, if you've got a lot, whether it's 10 acres, 30 acres, whatever it is, they might say there's only one residence that's going to be allowed. It could be that you can't have certain types of animals on your land. It could be that you can't have any kind of commercial business or anything. Now, if you have, like, I have one client that they called me up and, she was like, hey, I do like melt wax and make candles. Would they consider that? No, not necessarily. As long as it's something small, that's not going to be necessarily considered commercial. Like, I've got a 3D printer that I make stuff with and occasionally sell in my garage, but I don't have like a business or anything like that. And I live in a subdivision. But things like, maybe a junkyard or, if you want it has, some might even have restrictions as like if you're going to use it as an Airbnb, things like that, and to be honest with you, like I have some acreage listed in just outside of Seguin right now, and there are deed restrictions in place. All right. And I make those available to the agents and I let them know, hey, there are deed restrictions in place and this is what they are. But to be honest with you, some of the property owners out there, like it does say, no more than one residence, but some of those property owners have more than one residence on their land, or it says no commercial. But one of them is actually running like a small winery out of there. Another one has like a honey making facility. He's got a bunch of bees and everything. And we're going to talk about bees in a second. So some people have some small commercial stuff going on. Whether it's enforced or not, the restrictions are still there. Somebody could raise a stink. They could contact the county. You're being notified saying, hey, your deed restrictions say you can't do that. You've got to stop. And they could sue you to stop you. Not saying they're going to sue you like for money or anything like that, but a judge could write an order and say, you've got to stop this. Also, are there utilities that are going to be available? So if you're near a road, like say like a county road or something like that, you're more than likely going to have at least electric that's going to be available. That's going to be available at the road, and you can run a pole, you can run electric to your land, right? Some of these really remote places, like say out in West Texas, aren't necessarily going to have that because you might be leaving like a local small county road to go down a private road to get to another dirt road to go onto your dirt road to get to your property. And there might not be any electricity out there at all. So you've got to think outside the box and say, hey, how can I be self-sufficient, right? You're going to have some solar panels to run your stuff. You're going to have a well. So speaking of water, if there's no water like at the road through like a water company or utility district or anything like that, you're going to have to drill a water well. And then if you don't have any electricity to run that water well, you're going to have solar that's going to be able to run it. And as far as septic, your sewage and everything like that, you're going to have to consider a septic tank. So going off of all that too, it's another point is, yes, hey, does it have all of that stuff, right? Is it going to have electric? Is it going to have water? Is it going to have septic or anything like that? And if it doesn't, you've got to factor those costs in because it's going to cost money and you got to pay for it for the electric company, whoever it is out there, whether it's electric company or co-op or something like that, to run electric from the road, setting a pole and everything onto your property so you can have electric on there. That's going to be a cost. Drilling a well is going to be a cost, okay? Having a septic system, that's going to be additional cost. So always consider those as well whenever you're buying. Some property may already have those in place, but if they don't, that's something that you're going to have to put the money up for to have it done. And like I talked about with the different terrain, you're also going to have the different soils and everything like that. So is it going to be conducive to farming if you want to have a small farm on it? Is it going to be conducive to being able to, build your home on it and have that stable? If you want to put in a pool, some people want to put in a pool. So is it going to cost extra? If you've got a lot of rock and limestone, that's going to cost extra to put a pool into because it's more work for them to do. Is it in a floodplain? You always want to check the FEMA maps. Whenever we're looking at rural places, me and my clients, I always check the FEMA maps and I always put the property in there to see if there is a floodplain. Is there any flooding that's happening on that property? If it's a section that you want to build a house on, is that going to be in a floodplain? Because unless you're paying cash, then you're not really going to be able to secure financing if you want to put your house built on a floodplain, unless you want to build up and have it on stilts. All right, let's talk about taxes. While Texas doesn't have a state income tax, we still have property taxes, and they are higher than some other places. Now, when you're looking at buying rural land, we're outside the city limits, so the taxes are going to be a little bit lower, okay? Here's a little tip. I've got some folks, like the folks that called me recently, and they said, hey, we want to buy some land. There's going to be, anywhere between like 2 and 4 families, all in the same family though, but 2 to 4 households that want to buy this land, and they want to have like a small family compound, and each one of them wants to have their own house. Well, one thing you've got to consider, okay, is to reduce your taxes, you want to be able to have either an ag exemption or a wildlife exemption on your land. That way you're not paying like huge, tax bills, and you're, paying a whole bunch of money for your land, right? You want to be able to get these exemptions to reduce your tax bill. Well, whenever you buy some land, so it's never happened with any of my clients, but I've heard other people talk. And what they did is they've had people that have bought like 10 acres of land, and then it had like either a wildlife or an ag exemption on it already, all right? But that county requires 10 acres to have that exemption, correct? Well, they went and built a house on it. Well, the county, what they're gonna do is they're gonna carve out an acre for the house and the surrounding area, and that's not subject to the wildlife or tax exemption. So now they went from like there are 10 acres to just 9, and that 9 doesn't qualify for that exemption. So I told them, I'm like, hey, if you want to have this, you need to look for at least, 15 acres. Let's look at 15 if, you're going to have like 4 families on it just to be safe. Let's look at 15 and up because of this issue. If there's already a wildlife or an ag exemption on it, you can continue it, okay? Contact the county, see what you need to do to be able to continue it. If you stop paying, right? If you stop paying on it, we'll cover this in other videos, then you're going to be responsible for like, I think 2 or 3 years of back taxes. Even when you didn't own it, you're going to owe those taxes on it. So if it's got an ag or wildlife exemption on it, please continue to use it for as long as you can. Keep up that exemption. And you always want to verify the current tax status to see if it has that wildlife or ag exemption on the property currently. And keep that in mind. If you're wanting to put a house on it, it depends on the county, so everything is county to county. Like when I had my conversation with this particular client the other day, I was like, hey, I know you're gonna have some questions. The answer to a lot of these is gonna be, it depends. Like we'll go into it some other time about, how to get your ag exemption and what animals you can have and how many, because it's gonna depend. Because you're going to have units. Like 1 cow might be a unit, but 5 goats might be a unit, and like 15 chickens might be a unit. So, and that's a unit like per acre, but we'll go into that in another video. All right, another thing to consider are easements and say like mineral rights, land rights, things like that. So an easement are rights that allow other people to access the property. And it could be that maybe there is a pipeline or something that goes through the property. So that pipeline company is going to have that easement, okay? They're going to be able to access your property, right? To be able to go to their pipeline, to inspect it, whatever needed to do. And the pipeline's not going to be above the ground or anything. It's usually below the ground. But they're going to be able to access that, and that's going to be in the deed, okay? All that's going to be, out there for you. Before we buy land, we'll contact a title company and say, hey, can you send us the deed restrictions? If there are any, or any kind of easements, anything like that. Let's do our research first to see if there are any in place, and that way that ahead of time before you go in and start writing contracts and send in money and things like that. An easement could also be something that's deeded to a landowner that's, say, maybe behind you. Maybe you've got you're buying some property that has road frontage, okay? Well, then there's some property that's going to be behind you, a section that's going to be behind you that doesn't have road frontage, that's kind of like landlocked. Well, there's usually going to be an easement along your property that's going to give them access. It's going to be your property, but they have a legal right to access it, and like say maybe a driveway or something, so they can access their property as well. And vice versa. Like maybe, you're buying the property that's kind of landlocked, and behind it, you'll have an easement that's going to be deeded, that you'll be able to access this other person's property, right? To get on that driveway to be able to access yours. Like where I grew up down in, like B County, Refugio County, my best friend, they had like 1,100 acres, but guess what? In their ranch, they didn't have any highway frontage, right? They had their gate, and that gate, from that gate to the house was a mile. Now, as the crow flies, less than a mile, but there was this huge long stretch that went between, other property owners' property, like on somebody else's property, but it was fenced off and everything for the Ranchito Escondido. So you go down that driveway, and then once you hit like the first cattle guard, then it turned into their property and everything. But they had that access that was deeded to them in an easement so they can access it. And then also say your land rights. Mineral rights are the big thing, okay? They're not always going to come with a property. That's something that could be negotiated if the seller has the mineral rights, okay? They won't always have it because maybe there was somebody else before them or somebody else before them. And this original owner somewhere up here along the line maintained the mineral rights. We can go to that a little bit more in a later video, but basically if you don't have the mineral rights and somebody else does, you've got the surface rights, okay? And then if it's a big enough tract or something like that, but somebody wants to come in and say like drill an oil well or something, and they want to go for those minerals that are in there, right? Like the oil that we have here in Texas, they have the right to do that. Now what happens is the oil company is going to pay you, for those surface rights, and maybe put in a road for you, pay you to use that part of the land, things like that. But mineral rights don't always come with the property. All right, the last thing that we'll talk about to consider is financing. Not every single lender is going to offer financing for land. So my preferred lender is Wes Cleckley with Pilgrim Mortgage, right? They do a lot of stuff. They do the stuff, if you already got the land, they can finance almost anything for it, correct? But they're not gonna be able to finance the land for you. What you'll wanna do, and we've got some good lenders that we work with, is go to the Texas Farm Credit System. There's like 11 lenders that are here in the state of Texas that fall under this farm credit system, right? And they're gonna be able to do the financing for you for the land. Like say you're wanting to buy like a big ranch, a small ranch, whatever it's gonna be. They can help you secure financing for the land itself. They can help you secure financing for things like implements or equipment that may be negotiable that's gonna come with the land, okay? They're gonna be a lot more well-rounded because this is what they specialize in. They can do residential as well, but doing the land and everything that goes with it is what they specialize in, and it's always best to use them. All right, y'all, so that's what you need, some of the things you need to know to consider when you're buying land in Texas. If you're thinking about buying land anywhere in the state of Texas, let me know. Give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. All that contact information is down below. I've got a huge network. If it's not me that's gonna be able to help you, I've got a huge network of folks that are around here in the state, all over the state, that can help you out. All right, until next time, y'all take care, and we'll see you in the next video.